Aloha, my name is Kevin Kimball, and this video tutorial should teach you how to create a simple interest loan calculator schedule. You should have already learned in a prior class the concepts that support a simple interest loan and the calculations related to that. In this case, I'm already showing you the finished product, which is the simple interest loan calculator that we'll be creating during this video tutorial. Whenever you compute simple interest, you really only need three major variables. Those are the principal loan amount, the interest rate, and the loan period. So in this example, principal loan amount is $20,000, the interest rate is 10%, and the loan period in years is 4 years. With this information, you can compute the monthly interest rate, which is simply the principal times the rate times 1/12 of a year. And that gives you $167 in this case. Total interest then would be these $167 times 4 years times 12 months. And the total principal to be paid is this $20,000. And if you add these two together, interest paid and total principal, you get the total payments. You may notice on the screen that there is an arrow pointing to the left whenever I click my left mouse button. Other times you might see me click on the right mouse button and that shows an arrow to the right. So just so you know when I'm left clicking and right clicking. Then there'll be a check figure that verifies that this algebraic computation of total payments agrees with the supporting schedule down below. And this is the detail for all 48 months for this 4-year loan, and with the principal being repaid at the end, and total payments $28,000. It's the cumulative total payments. So that's the goal of this tutorial, is to have you create this exact simple interest loan calculator, but we will create it from scratch, and as we go along we'll teach you some fundamentals of Excel. So I'm going to move this out of the way, just dragging and dropping it, moving it out of the way, and then we will start with our blank Excel spreadsheet. The first thing you should probably do whenever creating a new workbook is you probably should give it a name and save it. That way you can ensure that you don't somehow lose it during a power outage or something like that. So the way you can do that is just go up here, click on the Office button, go down to Save As, and choose Excel Workbook. Now another way that you could do this is go Alt F-A, and that's just a hot key shortcut that would get you to the same screen. So we're going to click on Excel Workbook here, and that brings up the Save As screen. And on the Save As screen, I'm going to save it under My Documents. You might choose to click on My Computer, and you might have a flash drive where you save your work, or your My Drive or something like that. I'm going to save it under My Documents, Accounting 232B. And I have already created a folder which is a simple interest loan calculator schedule folder. If you want to create your own folder, all you have to do is you click on this here, create new folder, and then you can give it a name. You've probably already learned how to do that, but if not, that's how you create a new folder. So I like to use folders to kind of keep work together and not get it all mixed up between my different classes that I teach or other areas that I might keep files for. Now the name of this schedule, as you can see, I've already created this schedule a few times. I'm going to create another one here, Simple Interest Loan Calculator, and we'll call this the final tutorial so I know which one I'm working with. And then I would click on the Save button here. You notice that this is an Excel workbook. That means these are Excel 2007 workbooks. Sometimes you might see, you might choose to save it in a prior version. Maybe the person you're sending it to only has Excel 2003. So you can go down here under the Save As type, choose the drop down, and choose maybe Excel 2003. As you can see, I have no Excel 2003 files in this folder. And I could save it there, but I don't choose to do that because I want it to be in Excel 2007, and I'll choose Save. So up here in the title bar you see that the name of the file has now changed. It was Book 1, now it's the final tutorial, and hopefully you've got that named and saved. I'll try to go through this fairly quickly, but I want to make sure that the audio matches the video. Sometimes if I go too fast talking something through the video that gets captured doesn't match, but I do hope that this will wind up matching. To start off, let's title this up, make sure people know what the spreadsheet is for. These are some simple spreadsheet formatting rules of thumb that I recommend that you follow. We'll title it the Simple Interest Loan Calculator Schedule. Below that we might note who prepared it, prepared by, and I might move over a couple cells, C2, and type Kevin Kimball as the preparer. Under A3, prepared on, which might be the date that I prepared it on. Today is June 12th, 2009. You may have noticed in a prior video you can do something like this called today, and it'll put in the date today. You see they match because today is June 12th. But anyway, that's something worth knowing in case you want to make sure that the current date always appears on what you're printing, for example. Then we're going to type in the purpose of this spreadsheet. The purpose of this worksheet is to compute the total interest to be incurred. And you'll notice that I actually will type off the screen, but don't worry about that because we'll make sure it all comes back and fits back on the screen later on. But I'll try to at least make sure that you catch the words. To be incurred and the total, I'll bring this over a little bit, make sure it still fits. The total payments to be made, including principal over the life of a simple interest loan with monthly payments due at, and you see now it's wrapped visually, due at a specified rate for a specified period of time. So right now that's not very nice because the words go off the screen. It's too wide for a single 8.5 by 11 printed page. So what we might choose to do is we're going to highlight. I'm going to click left mouse click and drag this out to F4. So all that did is I held the left mouse button down, I dragged and dropped to F4. That highlighted that. So now this has been selected, and I'm going to choose under the home ribbon. I'm under the home ribbon. Under alignment we have merge and center, and I want to merge the cells. So that means cells in column A through F on row 4 have now become one cell. You see that you don't have these vertical lines in this anymore, which is pretty good, but still the words go off out of the cell. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose the wrap text option under home alignment wrap text. Click on that, and now what that means is when it got to the edge of this cell it wrapped and it continued, but since this row is too short you can't see it. So I'm going to move my cursor, my left mouse click right between row 4 and 5, and I'm going to drag it down maybe about 68. Looks like it's still too short. Drag it down a little bit further. Maybe I'll just double click. As you can see, brought it back to a single row. I didn't want to do that actually. Bring it down a little bit further. So in other words, just adjust this so it looks nice. Maybe we'll also get into the edit formula bar up here. Just click your left mouse up at the top, and you can either hit B up here for bold and U up here for underline, or you can learn the hotkey, which is Control B and Control U, and that does the same thing. It underlined and bolded that. We can now move on to the data section, which will be starting in row 6. And under the data section we'll have the principal, loan amount, the interest rate, the loan period in years. Sometimes you need to let the user know. They might want to put it in as months. Then you'd have to make sure you consider that in your formula. So you want to make sure it is in years. You have your monthly interest. You have your total interest paid, total principal paid, your total payments, and you have a check figure. One thing I like to do is I like to name my cells, so I'm going to name each of these cells. The way you name cells is you just click on the cell. In this case I'm choosing C8, and I go up into the name box, and I'm going to call this principal loan amount. Under interest rate I will call this interest rate. Each time I'm just using left mouse button to click up here in the top. This is loan period in years. Next one is monthly interest. Now it's going to give me an error message. You notice I put a space in there. Watch this. This is the error message that will go up if you try to put spaces in your range names or use numbers as the beginning of your range names or weird characters. Just use normal alphabetic characters, and you shouldn't have any problem with having invalid range names. So there's your monthly interest. We have total interest paid. We have total principal paid. We have total payments. And I'll even give this one a name check figure, even though I don't believe I'll refer to it later on. One thing you might want to be aware of, let's say we didn't want this space here between data section and principal loan amount. We can click on the row, left mouse click, and then right mouse click and choose delete, and that gets rid of that row. If you really did want it, you could go Control Z, which undoes it, or I'm going to redo that. If you see up here, I'm going to undo that. Sorry, I guess that didn't work. I'm going to right click this and just delete it again. If I wanted to insert a row, another thing you can do is you can right click and choose Insert, or you can go Alt, and that Alt brings up these menu options. You can see these are hotkeys for other things that you might choose to do. But I'm going to choose I for Insert, which is an Office 2003 access key. This is actually an older hotkey for this. And then R, that's another way. And then I'm going to right click it again, delete, and I'll use the Office 2007, Alt, and you see Insert is an N here, N, and then see if it'll choose R. Okay, so then so if we go here and choose Insert from this, then it puts it back in. It doesn't look like under the hotkey Alt N standing for Insert that there's an option for row here. At least I don't see that as an option here. Anyway, I'm just hitting the escape button to get out of that. So we've got our data section titled, and we have the various cells named. Now what we can do is we can start putting in values. The variables that you would expect the user to input would be the loan amount, let's say $20,000. The interest rate, 0.1 is how you could input it, or the user might put in 10%. Now if you put in 0.1, it also shows up 10%. So, and it actually automatically formats if you put it in 10 and then the percent symbol. If you just put in 0.1, then you'd have to later go to the home and choose to hit the percent formatting if you want to take that approach. Anyway, go ahead and delete that. The loan period in years, let's say it's a 4-year loan. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hold the shift button down and go end up. So it highlights these cells. It stops at this blank row because there's nothing in it. And we're going to change the color here to maybe an olive color. And we'll put a bold around it, a thick box border around it. It doesn't look very thick. Let's see. Okay, looks good. Down below we can start doing the math then for monthly interest payment. The monthly interest payment would be, as you know from a previous class, principal, which is the loan amount, times the rate, times the time period, which would be 1 month divided by 12, because we want to know the monthly. If you don't want to do times 1 divided by 12, as you know, something multiplied by 1 divided by 12 is the same as that number divided by 12. So you can just do this divided by 12 like that. And I tend to use parentheses to make sure that the order of precedence of the mathematical operations occur in the order that I want them to. The innermost parentheses will occur first, and then they work their way out. So this is the way that I make sure that that happens. So that's up to you how you choose to show that math. The first way is probably more exact with what you've learned, but this is algebraically the same thing. Next, to know the total interest to be paid over the life of this loan, you would simply take the monthly interest and you multiply it by the years, and then you have to multiply that by 12 because there's 12 months in a year. So that would be $8,000 being paid over 48 months. Next, the total principal is simply the amount borrowed in the beginning. Therefore, the total payments would be the total interest plus the total principal paid. We'll worry about the check figure later. But effectively the check figure will be these total payments, and then we deduct the total payments down in our schedule below. So if you've got that, we're pretty well set to move on into the data section, into the answer section. Answer section. And in the answer section we'll have a month, which we will number 1 through 48. We'll have an interest payment. We'll have a principal payment. And we'll have a total payments. We'll put a 0 month just as the beginning, and then we'll have a 1, a 2, a 3. And I just want to forewarn you, I'm going to create this answer section 2 different ways. One way in which it can only handle a 48-month period, no shorter and no longer, and then I'll redo it to be able to handle any period from 1 month on up to 360 months, which would be 30 years. But once you create a sequence of numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, Excel will recognize that sequence, so you can highlight it just by holding the shift button down on cell A20 and using the down arrow key. So we've got that highlighted, and then you can just drag this down, and we're going to go down to 48, and that will, it's not row 48, it's number 48. You see that Excel did that for me, which is kind of a nice feature, and I can go end up to get up to the top again. Now the interest payment in any given month will simply be equal to the monthly interest. So all you have to do is just click equals in cell B21, go up to cell C11, you see that monthly interest appears, hit enter. And that's good. Let's go to the next one. Well, let's first copy this down. I'll explain my reason here in a moment. But since we've got a formula that we like, and since we've already numbered these rows and they're adjacent, there's actually values in the cells just next to all the way down to row 48, Excel will allow me to put my cursor in the bottom right corner of this formula cell when the crosshairs appear, and just double click. And what that did, if I go end down, you see it went all the way down to row 48, and it's been copied. This formula, monthly interest, has been copied all the way down. If I go end up and up to the top, I then will need to bring in the principal payment. Now the principal will not be repaid until the very end of the loan. So if I want to get down to that 48th payment, I'm going to move over to column B and go end down, so it'll get me to the very bottom, and then move over one cell, and there I can type in equals, and a hotkey to get to the very top would be Control Home, and then I can just now see my principal loan amount, click on that, and hit enter. So all that's happened is I just wound up with a form that says equal principal amount, loan amount, which is the principal paid to be paid at the end of the loan. So I'm going to go end up, and I'm back to total payments. Now total payments in cell D21 would be equal to the prior total payments, which at that point are nothing, plus the sum of any principal payments and any interest payments, and therefore those are your total payments. And this we would have to drag down to row 48 because there isn't anything in the adjacent cells to get that right. So assuming you've got that, you can see here at the bottom the total cumulative payments is 28,000. That's effectively our check figure from up above. So let's go up again, end up, and we can now create our check figure. So here our total payments were computed algebraically, and then we're going to deduct. I'm going to click here on D21, end down, cell D68, and hit enter. And as you can see, it winds up to be 0. And what that means is we've just reconciled algebraically our computation of total payments with the detail of those total payments, and the check figure reconciles. Now a good habit to get into when you're reconciling figures from different areas on a spreadsheet is to use conditional formatting. Now conditional formatting is a method by which you can have this cell be formatted in a different way if to meet certain criteria. For example, let's say the check figure, let's say this was wrong. I'm going to go ahead and add maybe $10,000, so this won't reconcile. So right now the check figure is $10,000. It should be 0, so that there's a problem. Maybe I want that to turn yellow text and red background if the check figure doesn't turn out to be close to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and use what's called conditional formatting. You'll notice it's just over here on the screen. I'm going to drag it over a little bit. It's on the home ribbon, and it's a little bit to the right under styles, and you'll see conditional formatting. So I'm going to have to click on that. Maybe I'll even drag this over a little bit to bring it onto the screen. Bring my styles onto the screen. I hope that'll fit. Yeah. So you see now I've brought this over a little bit. This will look a little bit different than what you see, but big idea is on the home screen under styles you should see conditional formatting. And since I'm now currently on cell C15, I want to conditionally format this cell if it meets the rule that the check figure is not equal to 0. Okay. So we're going to do this. We're going to write a new rule, and on this new rule we will format only cells that contain a cell value that is between, let's say, a minus 0.01. No, let's say it's not between. It's not between. So in other words, if it's not less than a 1 penny difference, we want it to be formatted. So 0.01 minus and 0.01 positive. And we're now going to click on the format here. Click on the format, and we want maybe it to be bolded. I'm on font. I want it to be bolded. I want the color of the text to be yellow. Okay, so I went to font style, bolded it, went to color, chose yellow, but that'd be pretty difficult to read, as you can imagine. So let's go to the fill tab, and let's choose the fill effect, which is the background in the cell, to be red. And you can see this is what it'll look like if the check figure doesn't reconcile effectively to 0 and we hit OK. Now as you can see right now it doesn't reconcile, so we'd have to go back and research why it doesn't reconcile. Let's see. All we see now that it's equal to total payments. But the check figure shouldn't be equal to total payments, it should be equal to total payments minus, and then once again let's go down to the bottom of total payments here, which is row D68, click it, hit enter, and we see it's still not reconciling. So we'd have to ask yourself, why is that? Well, if I look at the math here, it's 8,000, 20,000, that should be 28,000. As you can see, we still have the $10,000 in there, and that helped us to catch an error in our spreadsheet. We delete that, and it's back to reconciled. And as you can see, there is no conditional formatting going on right now because it does reconcile. In fact, you could even turn it green if it does reconcile, turn it red if it doesn't. You can do a couple conditional formats on the same cell if you want to. But we'll maybe put top and double bottom borders, so if you want to do that you can go up to font and choose borders and you have a top and double bottom border, and I think we're pretty good there. So this is a decent schedule. The problem though is if the user comes up and says, so well I don't really want a 4-year loan, I really want a 3-year loan, watch what happens. We don't reconcile. The reason we don't reconcile is because although the algebraic computations up here are correct, where total payments will be 26,000, the math down below in the detail extends beyond 3 years. 3 years would have been 36 months, but you see we still show interest payments and we still show the principal payment being made in the 48th month, and that obviously doesn't apply. Another thing, you know, if we did it for a longer period, what if we made this for 25 years? Once again, now we're $42,000 off. Why? Because our schedule only goes down 48 months, which is a lot shorter than 25 years. So what we want to do is we want to actually improve the schedule so it can handle a variety of user inputs. Maybe loan periods anywhere from 0 to 30 years. So I'm going to go back to Control Home, and we're going to start making some modifications to take care of this problem. I'll move this back to a loan period of 4 years. First thing we want to do is let's get rid of all this old data. We really don't want any of this, so we are going to delete all of it just so it doesn't corrupt what we tend to do later. Okay, so just delete it all, start from scratch, and I'm going to step you through the formulas to compute the month and interest payment and all that other stuff. So to continue, you want to move into cell A21, which is currently blank, and we want the month to only appear if it's in the loan period. So we would want months 1 through 48 to appear, but any months beyond that we would want to appear blank. But if the loan period changed to 5 years, we would want 1 through 60 to appear. So I'm going to show you something called an if-then statement that will be used to bring in the month for applicable months of the loan period and to put in a blank when it's not part of the loan period. First thing you need to know is how to use what's called the count function. The count function simply counts the number of cells that have a value in it. For example, if I'm in cell E13 and I type count, left parentheses, and I highlight maybe 4 cells, and these 4 cells all have values in them, then the count should be 4 because these 4 cells do all have values. Now if I extend the range, maybe I'll change this 11 to be 7, you see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cells that are in this range. See if you see that? There's actually 8 cells in that range, but what's the count? The count is only 7. Why? Because the first cell in this range has no value in it. So that idea of a count will come into play in what I'm going to do next. So move into cell A21, and we're going to use what's called an if-then-else statement. What an if-then-else statement is you say, if this is true, then do this. Otherwise, do this. And it allows you to do some pretty fancy and powerful things within Excel. So we'll start off by typing the equal sign, and then if, and then what we're going to do is we're going to count A20 to, in this case, A20, which currently, since there is a value in there, 0, the number would be 1. So the count would be 1. If that count is greater than the loan period times 12, then that would mean that we are beyond the loan period that we're trying to compute for. If that's the case, then we should put in a blank in this cell. Now, if we're not beyond the loan period, then what we want to do is we want to put in the month number. So the month number would be the prior month number plus 1. And let's hit enter. And so what's just happened is we've come up with 1. Now if I copy this down, let's go down to row 61, let's say, and you can see the numbers keep computing. But if I go just beyond 48, drag it down just a little bit further, well, let's go back one. You'll notice that as I drag that down, I went down to row 73, I actually wound up with payment months beyond 48. I didn't want that to happen. What you need to watch out for is, if I go into F2, my count is only A72 to A72. What I wanted this count to be was A20 to A72, so it counts all those months prior to it. So what we need to do is we need to go back and change our original formula. So what we'll do is we'll just, this is no worries, and this is a good thing to learn. We didn't fix our beginning point using absolute references. So I'm going to hold the shift button down and go end up, and then go down a couple cells, and we're going to delete from 22 down, okay, and go end up. So all you want to do is you want to just get back to this original formula. Everything below you just want all deleted, and now you're on A21. And hit the F2 button, and the only thing we need to change to make this work is put a dollar in front of the A and dollar in front of the 20. You really don't need it in front of the A because we're not going to copy this to another column, and therefore the column reference won't change. You could have just left it like this. Another way of doing this is if it's sitting there as A20 like that, you can hit the F4 button and it will toggle to fix the column and the row. If you toggle again, it fixes just the row. Toggle again, fixes the column, and you toggle again, it's back to normal. So I'm going to toggle it once, fixes the row and column. That's certainly good enough. And now I'll do what I just tried to do. I'm on cell A21, and I'll drag it down maybe to row 80. It's a left mouse click and a hold all the way down and release. Now you see I have nothing in 80, but if I go up, you'll see at 48 there are values in there. The formula is exactly the same, but for 1 to 48 it inputs the month number. So 1 to 48 it inputs the month number, but from beyond 48 it puts in this double quote, which is a blank. So I hope that makes sense to you. And we want to drag this down even further. We want to go maybe down to row 380. The reason I'm doing that is so that it can handle a loan period up to 360 months. Okay, so I've dragged that all the way down to row 380. So bottom line, I just hit end up. Just make sure you've got your formula in cell A21 to look exactly like this. You need to have it exactly like this, and then you copy it down to row 380 all the way down. So we've got our month working just fine. Now we're going to use our interest payment. Once again, we only want interest payments to appear in the months 1 to 48, or in other words, the months related to the actual loan period. So we will now come up with a formula that tests whether we're beyond the life of the loan. If so, put in a blank. If not, put in the actual monthly interest. So I'm going to go here in cell B21 equals if A21 equals blank, meaning we're beyond the life of the loan, then put in a blank as the monthly payment, the interest payment, because there's no interest payment necessary beyond the loan life. And then put in a comma, and this would be the false, meaning we're still within the life of the loan, and we want to go up and pick up the monthly interest. Okay, so if we've got that, we have to end the parentheses. Every beginning of a parentheses, a left parentheses has to have a right parentheses, and we hit enter. Since we have something in each of these cells all the way down to row 380, I can move my cursor to the bottom right hand corner of this new formula I wrote and double click, and that's now been copied all the way down. You see it'll go to 48 and then stop, but the formula, as you can see up here, is still in these cells. It just is coming up blank, and it goes all the way down. If I go end down, I'm in row 380 and it still has that formula. So I hope you're getting the idea here. The nice thing is that I can now change the life of this loan, and the numbers will appear for any length of loan necessary. End up. And now we need to come up with principal. Principal is the same idea. Now what we want to do is we want to write an if-then statement that will bring in a principal amount only on the very last month of the life of the loan. Well, in this case, the very last month of the life of the loan is 48. Well, how can we test that? Here's an if-then statement that will do that for you. So activate cell C21, and in cell C21 we're going to write an if-then statement. If A21, so in other words, if the current month is equal to, we're going to go up and say the loan period in years times 12. So in other words, if the current month is equal to the total number of months in the whole life of the loan, then type into this particular cell the principal amount. If not, meaning if we're in any other period, any other month other than the very last month of the life of the loan, put in a double blank. Put in a blank and hit enter. So as you can see, I do have a formula in here, but since it's not in the 48th month, it puts in a blank. Total payments, once again we have to make sure that we're not putting in a total payments amount in periods beyond, in months beyond the life of the loan. So we'll have to come up with a formula for that one as well. To do that, just activate cell D21, and in cell D21 we're going to do an if-then statement. If A21 is equal to blank, double quote, then double quote. In other words, if no month appears, then we must be beyond the life of the loan, and therefore you shouldn't compute total payments. So that would be the true option. False option would be to add up total payments. So we're going to pick up last month's payment plus the sum of this month's payments, and we need to end the if-then statements. So these two parentheses match over the sum, and then these two parentheses match on the if-then. Okay, so that should work. All these cells do have values in them, so we can put our cursor here to the bottom right, double click. Oops. Let's go ahead and drag this. Just put your cursor in the bottom right hand corner and drag it all the way down to 380, and that should be good. Now where should that total payments computation stop? It should stop in row 48, in payment 48, and it does, and that looks good. Now, what I don't see is that we haven't copied down the principal amount. We came up with this formula. That's why when I tried to copy this down, it didn't work, is because there were no cells over here to tell it when to stop. So I have this formula here in row C21. I'm going to put my cursor in the bottom right, double click, and we should see our principal payment showing up in row 48. There it is, and we got it. So let's go back and check our check figure. That was Control Home. Check figure comes out to be 0. If you notice before, if I didn't have this in C68 there, if that were not there, we would have come up here and we would have realized that our check figure didn't match and that we had a problem. So I'm just going to drag that down again just to make sure we got it. And now Control Home, back, and we're reconciled. So it seems like we reconcile. Maybe we should test a couple items. Why don't we change the principal loan amount to be $50,000? Why don't we change the interest rate to be 0.08? It's nice to have a few check figures so you can make sure that your math works. That's why you want to know how to use your HP12C so that you can mathematically verify the numbers that are spitting out of your Excel spreadsheet. And I'll put in maybe a loan life of 30, let's say 29 years. Now, interesting. Here it looks like we have a problem. It looks like the total payments far exceed the actual payments down here. Let's see what happened. Okay, looks like that's all. I'm going to go in down, and looks like I show 166,000 as the total payments. And if I go home and compare, it is 166,000. So it seems like my check figure is wrong. So the point I'm trying to make here is, if you don't have check figures to kind of verify what you've done, you'll create spreadsheets that come up with wrong answers, and that's why that check figure is so very helpful. So what you'll notice, if I go F2 in cell C15, I still have the old formula from the old spreadsheet before we made these changes. So what we should do now is we should come up with a different check figure. So we have total payments here, which are algebraically computed, and we can deduct the sum of all payments down below. I'm not going to bother with this column on the far right because I can just start here in row B20 and C20 and go end down again. And what you see is I've now got a sum of cells B20 all the way to C380. So that adds up all numbers in column B and column C and deducts them from total payments, because B is total interest, C is the total principal, and therefore we've got a different check figure. Okay, and right here we're going to, if you notice what I'm looking at here, it did not turn red and yellow, so this is not an error. If you look at how this is set up, this is e to the minus 10. If I format this general, you'll notice that that was a very, very minor rounding difference. You know, all these rounded cause that to have a slight difference, and that's why my check figure will only conditionally format if it's greater than, if the difference is less than, if the difference is greater than a penny, either side of 0. So anyway, I hope that made sense. The big idea was, if we take these total payments algebraically and deduct all these interest and principal payments all the way down to the bottom, we come up with effectively the same number mathematically. You know, there's a very, very slight rounding difference, and that's why if I were to increase these decimals, you might see that there it is. It's like way down. It's so minimal it's not even worth worrying about. So anyway, that's what that is. I'll go ahead and use that comma style up here. Now all we have to do is just format the spreadsheet to look a little nicer. So I'm going to go Control Home. I'm going to highlight Data section here, and I'm going to go out to F, and I'll put a blue, maybe I'll use the same color, the olive green. I'll put a thick box border around it. Maybe I'll Control Bold. Moving on down, let's format the currency amounts. We have principal amount, we have monthly interest, all these. I'm control clicking as I go along, so let me try that again. Control click, and I'm holding the control button down and I'm clicking, and you can even drag and drop if you wanted. But maybe I'll set those all as currency with 2 digits. The other thing here is the loan period in years. We might choose to center that, so under alignment here, under the home alignment, I might choose to center. Maybe I'll even center the interest rate as well. Just maybe make it look a little bit nicer. Check figure, since that's kind of an important thing, I might control B that. I'll bold it. Let's go down to the answer section. I'll once again go out to F. Maybe I'll make this blue. Maybe a light blue, and put a thick box border around it, and control B, the answer section. The titles here, I'm going to highlight all those. So that's just Shift, End Over. That's a right arrow key. And I'm going to bold it, underline it, center it. Those are things you can do. The actual months, I might choose to Shift, End Down. And I want to center those. Makes it look a little bit nicer. And then all these payments, they're all double digit, so maybe I'll just use a normal comma style. We could put a currency there, but I think people would realize that that is currency. So those all seem to be formatted okay. One other thing we might choose to do is maybe document it a little bit better. Maybe when someone pulls this up and sees a check figure, they wouldn't know what it's supposed to tell them, or when they would know whether it's an error. So you can right click, and I might have to bring this up a little bit just so you can see this here. I'm going to bring this up. So I'm going to right click, and you see insert comment. And so I insert a comment, and here's where you can describe to the user what this does. This check figure will highlight in red with yellow text if the schedule detail does not match the total payments computation above. And that would help someone who follows behind you, because I hope you realize that whatever job you have, you won't stay in it your whole life. At least we hope you'll get a little variety and move on to other things. And so the schedules that you create, worksheets that you create, will probably be used by someone else. So if you can document them to be helpful for future users, that's always a very nice gesture. So let's step back and look at this and run a couple test items through to make sure it's working the way we want it to. Let's say, well, first off, when we look at this, it looks like these columns are a little narrow. Why don't we choose column B, C, D, yeah, and right click them, and let's change the column width. So we can choose column width, and let's make these maybe 15 wide, and that'll be a little bit bigger. Just in case someone puts in a really large loan amount. Let's say someone puts in a $1 million loan amount, or $10 million loan amount. If you look down here, you might want to just check all the way down to make sure that you don't get values that, in fact, I'll go N down. Looks like the formatting still works. Sometimes if this column is too narrow, for example, if this D column were too narrow, you get this pound, pound, pound. All that means is that the column's too narrow. So just right click it, or well, what you can do is you can double click and it'll automatically size it. But just to be consistent, we'll right click it and choose column width to be 15 to put it back to how it is. So as long as the loans are within reasonable size, looks like these column widths are fine. It doesn't look like any words are chopped off. It looks like this purpose has a little bit too much space up here, so maybe we'll shorten the cell size. Just one last scan. Once again, just kind of check your work. You might want to do a really short loan. Let's do a 10 million, 8% just for 1 year, and you know, You can check the math there. It's 10 million. The interest on that, as you can imagine, 10 million times 8% 1 year, 800,000, and therefore the math seems to match there. And you can scan down, and so that's another way of checking. You can see that this also works down below. There's no other values as you work all your way down. So that's good. Control Home again. Maybe I will center these. But you don't want to spend too much time on formatting. As mentioned in the class, you should first verify. You want to go through the process of ensuring that your spreadsheet is coming up with the right numbers before you spend any time on making it look beautiful. If you spend all your time making it look beautiful but the answer is still wrong, it really doesn't matter how beautiful it is. So I hope this has been a useful tutorial to you. This is one of the tutorials that you will need to create in the testing center within a certain time frame, which will be specified. The best way to get good at this is to just practice and do it over and over again, and learn the hotkeys to get your speed up, because you will be graded both on speed as well as correctness of your spreadsheet. I wish you all the best.